Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Good morning.
Om Namah Shivaya. Good morning, Acharya.
So we were looking at the inquiry into Brahman, which we call Vedanta Vichara, and we have discussed three things: Jagat, Atma or Brahman, and Maya, which we call Upadana Karanam. So we have discussed the Upadana Karanam. Now we have to look at the differences, right? So first you talk about Atma, then you talk about Anatma, then you look at the differences between the two. The Atma, Anatma, Viveka, which you also saw in Tattva-bodha. So that is what now we're going to take up. We look at verse number 16. Please unmute yourself and we will chant. Ahamekopi sukshmascha
Ahamekopi sukshmascha
Jnata sakshi sadavyayah
Jnata sakshi sadavyayah
Tadaham natra sandehah
Tadaham natra sandeha
Vicharasoyam idrishah.
Vicharashoyam idrisha.
Okay. So what the Acharya is saying here is that if you have the understanding that Atma and Anatma are different, then that is Jnana. If you think Atma and Anatma are the same, that is Ajnana, right? So Atma, Brahma, Aikyam is Viveka. Atma, Anatma, Aikyam is Ajnanam, right? So Atma and Brahman, if you think they are the same, that is discrimination. But if Atma and Anatma you think are the same, that is ignorance. So Atma is going to be now defined very specifically, and we should recall the 5 points of the Atma definition. Can anybody recall those 5?
So I'm not a part, product, or property of the body.
1.
I am an independent entity which pervades and enlivens the body.
2.
And I don't have time-wise or space-wise boundaries.
3.
And I survive the death of the body.
Yes.
And but I need a reflecting medium to
Correct.
to be
absolutely correct. Very good. So consciousness or Atma or I am not a part, property, or product of the body. I am an independent entity pervading and enlivening all the bodies. I am not restricted by the spatial or temporal boundaries of the body. I survive when the body is destroyed. But I, the surviving Atma, the surviving consciousness, cannot be experienced without the reflecting medium, right? So the individual, the RC, minus the body, which is the RM, is consciousness. So RC minus RM is OC. So that's what you have to say. And we can use two different words to denote, to talk about that consciousness, that Atma, RC and OC. So the two technical words are Vyakta Chaitanyam, the manifest consciousness. When we talk about the consciousness in association with the body, and when the body is not there, when the body has gone away, the same consciousness, we can use the word Avyakta Chaitanyam. So Vyakta Chaitanyam, manifest consciousness. Avyakta Chaitanyam, consciousness which is not manifest. Okay, and therefore, look at the words Aham Ekaha Api. Even though I am one. So you have to add, I am only one, but there are so many reflecting mediums. There are so many bodies, and as many reflecting mediums are there, as many reflecting bodies are there, that many reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa, will be there. Chidabhasas are many, but Chaitanyam, the Chit, is only one. So Aham Ekaha Api. Even though I am only one, and what kind of one? Sukshmascha. I am subtle or sukshma. So here sukshma has to be taken as which cannot be perceived by the sense organ. Indriya agocharam. Sukshma is indriya agocharam. I cannot be seen at all. I, the Atma, cannot be seen if the body is not there. So the consciousness in the body is Atman, I. That consciousness I cannot see, I cannot hear, I cannot smell, I cannot touch. And therefore, I can see the body moving. And that is how I appreciate consciousness. Life I appreciate in the presence of a body only. When the body is not there, I cannot see that life. Right? In fact, I cannot see the consciousness in your body at all. But I can appreciate that consciousness based on the fact that you are talking to me, that you are replying to my questions, that you are walking. Based on all these things, there is an anumanam, there is an inference that consciousness is there in the body. And this consciousness, I, Gyata, I am the experiencer of everything. I am the knower of everything. And we know the rule, right? The experiencer is different from the experienced. The experiencer can never be experienced. So Atman is always the Jnata, the knower. And again, when we talk about the knower, Jnata, we can classify into two. So there is the knower, which is the mind, right? The mind which has borrowed consciousness from Atma is called the knower. The Sukshma Shariram, Anatman, it gets consciousness because of its association with Atman. It borrows that consciousness from Atman, and it is the knower. So that is the secondary knower. Atman is the reason why mind gets consciousness. Mind can borrow consciousness from where? From the Atman only. And therefore, we can also call the mind as the knower, right? Remember that mind by itself is the knower only because it has borrowed consciousness. Atman, you can call the knower. But why do you call Atman the knower? Because Atman is the very reason why the mind becomes the knower. Remember that Atman without the mind cannot know anything. But the mind without Atman cannot know anything. The very lending of consciousness is done by Atma. And therefore, it is said that Atma is also the knower. The original knower, Atma is, even though when we say that, we have to be very careful. Atma cannot know without the mind. And therefore, the word jnata, knower, is used only for the mind. And when you talk about Atma as a knower, you use a different word. You call it Sakshi. So Atma is Sakshi, Manaha is Jnata. Atma is Sakshi, the mind is Chidabhasa. And because of this, we have to appreciate that mind and Atman are different. When the mind has not got borrowed consciousness, is there a state when the mind does not have borrowed consciousness or does not appear to have borrowed consciousness?
Sushupti.
Sushupti avastha, right? So when the mind is passive, resolved, that mind cannot be a knower. It has to be active. And therefore, jnata should here be understood as that consciousness principle which has got an association with the mind. And therefore, we can call it savikara jnata. The jnata who has got changes in it. Because mind is constantly changing because of the various thoughts in it. Right? What about Atma? Atma is Sakshi, is the knower because of its capacity to illumine the mind, to give consciousness to the mind. But Atma itself never becomes the knower by itself. And therefore, Atma can be called Nirvikara Jnata or Sakshi. So there are two knowers, the Savikara Jnata, who is the mind, and the Nirvikara Jnata, who is called the Sakshi. So the use of these two words, Jnata and Sakshi, is to indicate the special status of the Atma as the Nirvikara Jnata, as the non-changing knower. Right? Okay, having said this, when you say mind is a knower, we should recall that mind is basically the processing unit for knowledge which is given to it for inputs given to it by the organs, right? So even though we say mind is knower, mind cannot know without the indriyas. The inputs for knowledge come in only from the indriyas. The mind processes it all. While Sakshi lends consciousness to all these organs through the mind. Therefore, Sakshi does not need any instruments. It simply witnesses. And that's why it's called Sakshi. In the discussion, we must be very clear that the mind, the Atma, the Sakshi is the one which lends consciousness, and that is why it is called the ultimate knower, the ultimate Jnata. Not because it knows itself. That's why very often you will find that in texts it says that Sakshi is the direct knower. It knows everything without a pramanam at all. Right? So that's what this particular idea is being conveyed. There are two. There is the Atma and there is the mind. So there is a Sakshi and there is a Jnata. Remember that the next word is Sat. What was the definition of Sat in Tattvabodha? Trikale api tishtati iti Sat. When the body dies or the mind dies, or even if the whole universe stops existing, Sat continues. Sat Brahman continues, and therefore Avyayaha, it is unchanging. So we're talking about that Sat, Avyaya Sat, that unchanging principle which lends consciousness to the mind and makes the mind ajnata. What is that unchanging principle? So here he claims it. Tad aham. Tad is that which is what's being described, that Sakshi, which has lent consciousness to the mind and makes it ajnata, that consciousness, tadaham, I am. I am the observer sakshi. And then the Acharya says, na atra sandeha. In this respect, I don't have any doubt about that. Which means I have done sufficient nididhyasanam. This idea that I am this sakshi, I have no doubts about. And if you have still doubts about, then nididhyasanam has to be done until this idea is sunk into my subconscious mind. And this process of thinking, vicharaha, saha, ayam, idrashaha. This process of thinking, this process of nididhyasanam, this is called atma, anatma, vivekaha. Knowing what atma is, knowing what anatma is, knowing that consciousness is given to the anatma by atma, and knowing that that atma I am. This is the idea that is being pointed out. This is called atma, anatma, viveka. Okay. Now we chant the 17th verse. So please unmute yourself. Atma vinishkalo yekaha.
Atma
Vinishkalo
vinishkalo
Atma vinishkalo yekaha.
Atma vinishkalo ekah
Deho bahibir avritaha.
Deho bahubir avritaha
Tayoraikyam prapashanti.
Tayoraikyam prapashyanti
Tayoraikyam prapasyanti.
Tayoraikyam prapashyanti
Kimagyanam matah param.
Kimanamatam param
Okay, so I'm just muting you all. Right. So here Shankara is pointing out that there is a diagonal, almost a diagonally opposite difference in Atma and Anatma. And when they are opposite in nature, the idea is that what is Ajnanam? Ajnanam is I confuse that I am the body. So in other words, I am confusing that I, the Atma, am the Anatman. Body is Anatman, but I am really the Atma. And Ajnanam is what? Samsara is what? Samsara is my taking my body-mind complex as I. So I, the Atma, take the Anatma as myself. So Shankara points out that there is a problem here, right? There's a problem of non-discrimination because Atma and Anatma are diagonally opposite in many respects, in almost every respect. And when they are opposite in nature, how is it that Atma can be confused for Anatma? What is the answer? Maya is so powerful that it makes this impossible confusion possible. And in the next 4 verses, you will find that the first line of each verse points out the differences. Understanding the differences is jnanam. The second line of each verse gives the confusion, gives the mixing up of Atma and Anatma. And this is ajnana. So he says, Atma hi ekaha. Atma indeed is one. Right? Vinishkalaha, which cannot be divided. For example, you can take light. The light is one, sunlight is one. You cannot divide, right? Light cannot be burnt, light cannot be made wet. Lighted objects are many, but the light is only one. There can be many, many bulbs, but you don't say there are many lights. The light is only one. So, Atma hi ekaha vinishkalaha. The Atma is one indivisible entity, but deha bahubihi avritaha. But it is full of parts. That body is full of parts. Bahubihi avrataha. So you have hands, you have legs, you have eyes, you have brain, you have nose. But even when some of these organs do not function, you can survive, right? You can survive without one hand, without one kidney, without one lung. So I am Purnaha, whether these organs are present or otherwise. And therefore, one, I am Nishkalaha. I, the Atma, am Nishkalaha, without parts. However, the body is with parts, Sakalaha. So Atma is Nishkalaha, body is Sakalaha. Atma is one without parts. The body, the Anatma, is many without parts. So the difference is pointed out. What are the differences? One is indivisible without parts, Atma, while Anatma is divisible with parts. Understanding that this is the difference, that I am the Atma, the one without parts, and the body is something which I am using, and the body is not me, that body has got parts. That differentiation is called Jnanam, right? Atma, Anatma, Vivekaha is Jnanam. And then what happens? Tayoho ekam prapashyanti, right? Tayoho, these two, which two? The Atma and Atma, ekam prapashyanti, I see them as one. I mix up the Atma and the Anatma. I have this confusion. And when I have this confusion, Shankara says, Kim Ajnana Matah Paramaha. What Ajnanam is greater than this Ajnanam? Kim Ajnanam Matah Paramaha. What kind of Ajnanam can be greater than this Ajnanam? It's a question which has the answer built in. What is the answer? That this is the greatest Ajnanam. The Atma, Anatma mixing up is the greatest Ajnana. So the first line gave you the differences. The second line said that when you mix them up, that is one of the greatest delusions that you can have. Okay. Verse number 18. Please unmute yourself. Atma niyamakaschantaha.
Atma niyamakaschantaha.
Atma niyamakaschantaha.
Atma niyamakaschantaha.
Deho bahya niyamyakaha.
Deho
Tayoraikyam prapasyanti.
Tayoraikyam
Kimajnanamatah param. Okay, so he says, if you look at it, Atma Antaha. You have to break up that word Niyamakaschantaha into Niyamaka cha Antaha. And first you take Atma plus Antaha. So Atma Antaha, the Atma is inside. And what is it? Niyamakaha. Niyamakaha means the one who lays down the niyams, the one who lays down the laws. And therefore Niyamakaha is the controller. So Atma Niyamakaha, the Atma which is inside, is the controller. Atma Antaha Niyamakaha, or Atma Niyamakaha cha Antaha. That Atma which is inside is the controller. And Deho Bahyaha Niyamyakaha. So there's a difference between Niyamakaha and Niyamyakaha. Niyamakaha means the controller, and Niyamyakaha means the one to whom the rules apply, the controlled one. And where is that controlled one? Bahyaha. So Deho Bahyaha, the body is outside and the body is the controlled one. So the first line basically means Atma, which is inside, is the controller. The body which is outside is the controlled. Right? And when you say controlled, there is no physical control. The Atma doesn't, do any actions. The Atma doesn't use any instruments to control. There is no whip in his hand. How does the Atma control then? When you say Atma is controller, what does it mean?
The Satyam Mithya concept, its dependent existence.
In a way, yes. But you can say that the one who gives Sat and Chit, that is the Atma. The body exists because Atma gives Chit. The body is conscious because Atma gives, body exists because Atma gives Sat. Body is conscious because Atma gives Chit. And therefore the giver of Sat and Chit is the one who controls because he gives both. By lending consciousness and existence, Atma is controlling. Therefore, the Atma is Niyamakaha, the controller. Atma lends these two things. Body receives these two things. So the question being asked is, one is lending and one is receiving. Right? How can the giver and the receiver be identical? How can the lender and the receiver be identical? Right? So how can the person who gives the money and how can the person who receives the money be identical? And again he says, Atma antaha dehaha bahyaha. Atma is within, body is outside. Whatever is outside, you can drop. You can disidentify with. Whatever is inside is the real you cannot drop. So you can drop the bodies, but you cannot drop I am. You cannot drop that which still continues after you drop everything else. And therefore, remember that consciousness is required not only to prove that things are absent, but also to prove that things are present. So even to prove the absence of consciousness, remember you need another consciousness, right? For example, if you want to prove that XYZ who died is no longer conscious, you have to be there. The second consciousness, and therefore this is actually infinite regression. If you start this analysis, to prove there is no consciousness, I will need a second consciousness. To prove that there is a second consciousness, I will need a third consciousness. And therefore, it's an infinite regression. It never stops. And that's the reason why we say there is only one consciousness which is ever existent. And that consciousness, Atman, one is outside, one is inside. And he says again, Tayoho ekam prapashyanti, to see these two as one, as the same. Kim ajnana mata paramaha. What greater ignorance can there be? Remember that pashyanti in Sanskrit means to see. Then why prapashyanti, prakarshena pashyanti? To very strongly see or to very clearly see, which here has to be taken as strongly holding on to that view. Which view? That these two are not different. Atma and Anatma, if you think they are not different, Shankara says, Kim Ajnanam Atah Paraha. What bigger ignorance can there be? Okay, any questions so far?
Anatma said, no.
All right. Okay. So we go to verse number 19. So let us chant. Atma jnanamaya punyaha
Atma Jnanam
Jnanamaya
Deho Mamsamayo Shuchihi
Deho Mamsamayo
Shuchi
Tayoraikyam Prapashyanti
Pashanti
Kim Ajnanamata Param. So again, as you can see, every first line is pointing out a difference. And the idea being conveyed is, if you understand the difference, that is jnanam. If you mix them up, that is ajnanam. The first line says, this is jnanam. The second line says, if you don't understand this, then you are a ajnani. So Atma jnanamayaha, right? So mayam, remember, what is mayam?
To be pervaded by, or to be
blessed with.
like Jnanamayam.
No.
Mayam can be taken as the very nature. Okay, so Jnanamayam is the very nature of which is Jnanam. So Atma Jnanamayam. The very nature of Atma is Jnanam. Jnanam here is consciousness principle. Please remember, not knowledge. So Jnanam here is consciousness principle. Atma Jnanamayam. Atma is the very consciousness principle. Deho Mamsamayam. Mamsam is what? Flesh. Flesh is what? Inert. Mamsam is made of matter and hence Jada Swarupam. It is inert. Therefore, when you say Mamsamayam, it has to be taken as Jadamayam, as inert. So what he is saying is Atma Jnanamayam Dehaha Mamsamayam. The Atma is consciousness itself. But the Dehaha, it is Jada, it is inertness. How can both be identical? Consciousness and Jadam, they are poles apart, they are opposites in nature. How can they both be identical? Right? And then one more difference is given. Atma punyaha dehaha ashuchihi. So Atma is punyaha here means pure. It does not decay. Right? And dehaha is ashuddha. It stinks, it putrefies, it decays. One is pure, one is ever pure, one is ever impure. How can the pure and the impure be said to be the same? And yet, you, the Atma, the consciousness which is pure, punyaha, you say, I am a human being, which is, human being is the body, mind, sense complex also. Therefore, you have mixed up Atma and the Anatma part of it. And therefore, Shankara says, Tayoho ekyam prapashyanti kim ajnanam ataparam. What greater ignorance there can be than this ignorance saying that I am a human being? Something to be thought about, right? When you say I am a human being, we all think it's a great thing to say. But Shankara says it is the highest form of ignorance that you're having. The biggest delusion that you have is that you are a human being. Okay. The 20th verse. Atma prakashaka swachchaha
Atma
Prakashaka
dehastamasa uchyate
Tamasa
tayoraikyam prapashyanti
Tayoraikyam
kim ajnanamata param.
Kim
Atma prakashakaha swachha. Atma is the prakashaka, the illuminator, the experiencer principle, the consciousness principle. And while the body is the illumined, the experienced. So Atma is the luminous principle and the body is the non-luminous one. The illuminator is always shining. The one which is illumined never shines by itself, right? And how do you understand this? You don't need, let us say, one bulb, one tube light to show you another tube light, because both tube lights are self-illumining, they're self-luminous. So if you see that there is a tube light shining in your room, you don't look for another shining tube light to see the first tube light. And therefore, between two shining objects, two tube lights, the relationship of illuminator, illumined, revealer, revealed is not there. For the revealer, revealed, sambandha to be there, one should be revealer, the other should be the revealed. And because of the Atman, the body is revealed. And therefore, between the Atman and the body, there is the revealer-revealed relationship. So that is what he's saying here, Atma prakashakaha. And swachha here means bright. Therefore, the word swachha has to be taken as an adjective to prakashaka. Atma clearly, brightly reveals the body. Right? And dehaha tamasaha uchyate. So tamasaha here means that which needs the illumination. So you can take it as the inert principle, jadam. The body is not an illumining entity. The body is the revealed one. It is not the revealer. So Atma is the revealer. The body is the revealed. Tayoho ekam pasyanti. If you are mixing up the illuminator and the illumined, kim ajnana mataparam. What greater ignorance can there be in mixing up the than mixing up the Atman and the Anatman? Okay, now we go to verse number 21. Atma nityo hi sadrupaha deho nityo hi sanmayaha tayoraikyam prapasyanti kim jnanam matah param. Sa Atma Nityaha. Atma is eternal. And why is it eternal? Sadrupaha. It is in the nature of the existence principle itself. Atma lends existence to everything else. Atma doesn't need anyone to lend existence to it because it is the very source of existence. And therefore, Atma Nityaha, Atma is eternal. Sadrupa, he is the reason, the hetu. Why it is eternal? Because it is the very consciousness principle. Therefore, Atma is eternal because it is the existence and consciousness principle. And whereas Deho Anityaha, body is perishable. How do you know body is perishable? Everybody dies, we know that. We have gone to crematoriums, we have seen dead bodies. So everybody dies. Deho Anityaha. So Atma Nityaha, because it is this consciousness and existence principle, body is Anityaha because it is the one which borrows. And here you have to say, he Asanmayaha has to be broken up into Asatmayaha. That is the explanation for Deho Anityaha. He Asatmayaha. Why is the body Anityaha? Because it is Mithya. Mithya. The very nature of the body is Mithya, Asatmayaha. Mithya Rupam. Mithya means what? Dependent existence. And whatever has a dependent existence comes and goes. Therefore, the body is not eternal. It is anitya. When I have a body, I exist and I can do transactions. When I have no body, I still exist, but I can't do any transactions. And therefore, you must get this in our heads. Shankara is saying you have to understand that just because transactions end does not mean existence ends. Right? Transactions can come and go. Existence cannot come and go. Manifest existence, vyakta sat. Manifest existence is available to transact. Avyakta sat is not available to transact. When I am in Sushupti Avastha, that existence is there. I am existing. But the mind is not manifest. And therefore, though I exist, I can't transact with the world because the existence is not manifest. Okay. And therefore, the conclusion is I exist in both Avyakta Avastha and in Vyakta Avastha. I exist whether I can transact. When I'm transacting, I exist. When I'm not transacting, I still exist. In this life with my body, I'm transacting, right? When the body falls, my transactions stop. In this life, I the Atma am existing. When this body dies, I the Atma am still existing after the death of the body. When I acquire a fresh body, I begin to transact again. All through these changes, transactions, no transactions, fresh transactions, I am still existing. Transactions come and go. I don't come or go. I just remain. So I am ever existence. I am the ever existing principle, Atma. Sometimes I am in Vyakta Avastha, manifest form. You can see me, I can transact with you. Other times I am in Avyakta Avastha, unmanifest form. You can't see me, therefore you can't transact with me. And therefore always I am there. When the Srishti is there, I transact through so many bodies. When Pralayam is there are no bodies available for transactions. But I am still there. Atman is Nityam, Anatman is Anityam. And Tayoho Ekyam Papashyanti Kim Ajnanam Ataparam. To take the Nitya Atma and the Anitya Anatma as the one, what greater height of ignorance can there be? Okay, now verse number 22. Atmanastat prakashatvam
आत्मनस्तत्प्रकाशत्वम्
yat padarthavabhasanam
यत्पदार्थावभासनम्
yat padarthavabhasanam
Yad
nagnyadi deeptivat diptihi
नग्न्यादिदीप्तिवद्दीप्तिः
nagnyadi deeptivat diptihi
नाग्न्यादिदीप्तिवद्दीप्तिः
bhavatyandhyam yato nishihi.
भवत्यां यतो
So Shankara said that Atma is the illuminator and body is the illumined one. Atma is luminous, shining bright. And therefore Atma is often compared to a light, to Jyotihi, right? And this comparison especially when there are movies, movies and TV serials, what happens? The Atma is shown as literally as a light. So when the body dies, one small light lamp comes off from the body and moves towards the heavens. So all these are the cause of a lot of confusions. This comparison of the Atma with Jyoti light is a cause for confusion, because many people think that the light of the Atma will appear in Samadhi Avastha. Right? So this is all imagination. And if while meditating you see a light inside, what should you do? When I'm meditating, I see a light in front of my forehead.
I go to eye doctors.
You go to eye doctor. That is correct. So if you see light, it is imagination. It's a hallucination. All this is because we take the word illuminating or luminous in a incorrect meaning. And Shankara is telling us, what is the meaning of light? Light is an entity in whose presence things are known. Right? If I am standing in front of you, you know I am there because of the light. The light is that entity because of which you are able to see me. And therefore the definition of light is that entity in the presence of which other things are known is called light. That is why all your indriyas, sense organs, are called jyotihi also. So your ear is a jyoti, your eye is a jyoti. Every indriyam is called a jyoti, because why is the ear called a jyoti? Because in the presence of the ears, sounds are known. In the presence of the tongue, taste is known. Right? Similarly, there are other illuminators. If I am talking to you about something which you don't know, let us say I'm describing some place. I have gone to Himalayas, I have seen, Gangotri, and I'm describing to you what Gangotri is. You have not gone to Himalayas, you have not seen Gangotri. So my words are giving you an idea of what Gangotri is. So even words can be called Jyoti, Vak Jyotihi. So sense organs, the Indriyas, are Jyotihi. Basically why? Because of the consciousness principle alone. You are aware of the sense organs only because of the consciousness principle alone. And therefore that principle, which is Atma, is also a Jyotihi. So Atma is therefore called Jyoti because it is Swayam Prakashaha, self-illuminating. It does not need any other object for it to be known. So it's not a light in the literal sense of the term. In the dictionary meaning of the term, Atma is not a light, but it is the very principle because of which even a light is known. And therefore it is called the ultimate Jyotihi. Final Jyotihi, the greatest Jyotihi, is Atma itself. Right? And here so he says, Tat Atmanaha, that Atman, Tat Prakashatvam, that revealing capacity of the Atma, what does it do? Yat Padhartha Avabhasanam. Avabhasanam is the capacity to make something known. So Tat Atmanaha Tat Prakashatvam, that revealing light of the Atman is the capacity of the Atman, yat padhartha avabhasanam, to make any other object known. Padhartha is an object, right? So you should know the difference between pada and padartha. What is the difference?
Pada is word, padartha is any object.
Denoted by the word.
Thank you.
Right? That is very important to know. When I say glass, the pada is the glass, the word glass. But this, what does the word glass draw your attention to? It draws attention to this entity in my hand. Therefore, pada glass, padartha, the object glass. So artha here means object. Padartha means object of a pada. The object, the entity which is being illuminated or denoted by the word. Right? So tat yat padartha avabhasanam. The capacity to make the objects of any word known is the Atma. And Shankara adds here, but na agni adihi diptivat diptihi. Don't think that it is a fire, it is a light like any other fire. Because fire also illumines. So he says very clearly, this Atma has the capacity to make objects known, but don't think of it as a light like fire, which can reveal an object because of its illumination. Why? He gives a reason. If the light of consciousness is the light of fire, if you are equating the light of consciousness with the light of fire, there is a big problem. What problem is that? Yataha nishi, during darkness, andhyam bhavati. During darkness, the light of the fire is not available. Therefore, you will be blind. Right? What is he saying? What essential difference is he pointing out between the light of Atman and the light of any worldly illuminating entity like fire?
It doesn't come and go.
You can say that, but when you are saying yataha nishihi andhyam bhavati, in the night, you cannot see those things which you were able to see in the light of the fire. Right? So the idea is that when there is fire, you can see some things. When there is no fire, you cannot see things. Correct. That is the one statement. But if you are saying the light of consciousness is like the light of the fire, then in the night, you will not be able to experience the darkness also. Are you getting it? Fire there, fire present, objects are known. Fire not present, objects are not known. If you are saying that consciousness is like that, then when consciousness is there, you will see everything. But when darkness is there, can the fire be there? So darkness and fire, darkness and light can never coexist. But the ignorance of the night can coexist with the consciousness fire. Right? Darkness cannot coexist with the light of fire, but this tamas, this darkness, can always coexist with the light of Atma. So this tamas here referring to is ignorance. So he's pointing out the difference. When you are talking about the worldly fires, darkness can never coexist with light. What are the corresponding units? Consciousness and ignorance. But unlike the worldly fire, where darkness cannot coexist with the light, ignorance can coexist with Atma. A very subtle point. Even the very ignorance is known only because of the light of Atma. Am I making sense?
Yes, very clear.
A light which makes the darkness known without driving it away. Normally, if you switch on a tube light, the darkness goes away. You can't have light and darkness together. But this Atma is a light which makes you aware of the darkness, but without throwing it away. It makes you aware of the ignorance that you have without actually dispelling the ignorance. You need to make an extra effort to dispel the ignorance. Just knowing that I am ignorant will not drive away the ignorance. With this, we'll stop for today. Any questions?
So, Acharya ji, does it mean that, is it referring to the fact that an Ajnani knows that he's an Ajnani?
Well, it refers to the fact that at some point of time, you know that you are not the body, mind, sense complex, but you have not yet understood that you are the Atma.
Ji.
You begin to realize that I am not really the body or the mind. There is something else. So you are ignorant of that fact. Right? Like, for example, let us say that you speak to me in Chinese. I know I don't know Chinese, right? How do I know? It's not necessary that I should know Chinese to know that I don't know Chinese. That is what is being said.
Very well put. Thank you.
Acharya, this is Anvaya Vyatireka?
You can word anything into that this thing, There's no problem either way. If you put it in the right language, that also you can do.
Right.
Okay, so with this we'll stop for today. Thank you for your patience.
And you are the...
Sorry, go ahead.
Acharya ji, you are the Jyotihi for all of us, for the Shastra.
No, I'm not. Lord Krishna is.
No, that is Jyotir Jyoti.
Jyotihi. Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Thank
Thank you so much,
you.
Acharya ji.
Thank you so much, Acharya.
Om Om.